Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the channel. So I uploaded this montage from the film Boys from Brazil. And today we are going to stare down the face of evil. This is some of the most cryptic part of the world history that I think I've stumbled upon in my experience researching all of this. This film came out in 1978. Just 1 year before the infamous Joseph Mengele supposedly died. So who was Mengele? Well, we have to use code words with this particular show because of the sensitive subject matter. But Mengele was a Yahtzee criminal who performed grotesque experiments on twins. And weirdly, the place that he escaped to in South America has 1,000% increase in twin births. Now, this New York Times article right here tries to imply that Mengele had nothing to do with the twin birth explosion in the town that he lived in, even though he was providing women's health care services there for free for many years. Now, why are we talking about all this now? Well, because we're going through another twin birth surge here in America, conceived out of the spamdemic. So let's read this New York Times article quickly, because this is very important as they try to whitewash history. It says, in a Brazilian town, a rogue gene and a boom in twins. Santiago, Chile. For years, so many twins have been born in the small southern Brazilian town of Candido that residents wonder whether something mysterious lurks in the water, or even if Joseph Mengele, the Yahtzee physician known as the Angel of Death, conducted experiments on the women there. But a group of scientists now says it can rule out such long-rumored possibilities. So the gist of this article is they are trying to say that this is all about some kind of rare gene phenomenon and interbreeding among the population. And I don't buy this at all. The odds of him going down to this specific place to live tells me everything I need to know. And that these twin birth explosion came out after he lived there. But look at this. Says here, it was especially high in São Pedro, a village about 350 residents that is part of Candido. Dr. Matt found that from 1990 to 94, 10% of the births were twins. 10%, compared with less than 1% for Brazil as a whole. What is that, a 100-fold increase or a 10-fold increase? I don't know statistics very well. Well, that is very high. It says here, the high concentration of twins has stirred outlandish theories. Of course, they want to write it off as an outlandish theory. It says residents say Mengele moved around southern Brazil in the 1960s, posing as a vet at about the time the twin births were thought to have really taken off. And an Argentine journalist suggested in a 2008 book that Mengele conducted experiments on women that resulted in a baby boom of twins. And this is what I believe, many of whom have blonde hair and light eyes. So let's get into this and break down this montage and learn more about Mengele, who was called the Angel of Death. Now, I'm going to spare you some of the details with regards to the types of experiments that he did, because you don't want to go to sleep at night thinking about these images. But we are going to focus on only the twin experiments. Mengele sewed two Romani twins together back to back in a crude attempt to recreate conjoined twins. Both died of gangrene several days later after suffering. And here's the creepy part about what he looked into. He was actually looking into and hunting down some genetic traits that I personally, myself, possess. One of those is heterochromia. Now, this is relatively rare. I didn't realize how rare this is, where you have one color inside of another color. Kind of interesting how we discovered this nested reality, right? Things within things. I share this genetic trait. There is also another genetic trait called preauricular sinus. I have this dimple in my left ear. Now, let's go back here. Let me show you what he was doing here. He actually killed people that had the genetic trait that I share, and they would remove their eyes and send them to Berlin for study. Down here at the bottom of the article, you can see how he was looking into this fistula oris, which is the dimple in the ear, which also seemed to coincide with the dimple in the chin. Interestingly, he had the dimple in the chin too. But what makes this interesting is that as a result of some of this research, they have figured out that people who have the fistula oris, which occurs more commonly in African Americans, that it predisposes them to kidney abnormalities. Now, I'm not going to go into huge detail with this because I don't want to get lost in the minutia. But suffice to say, there's a genetic pattern for people who have the dimple in their ear. So if you have this, you might want to go get checked for bronchio-otorhinal syndrome, which can cause ear malformations of the inner and middle and outer ear. I've had ringing in my ears as long as I can remember, and now I think I know maybe why that is. And these are some of the kidney abnormalities. You can actually be born with a missing kidney. Both kidneys could be small. One could be malformed or connected in the middle like a horseshoe. So these conditions, and I'll link all this in the pinned comment, are associated with this syndrome, which is also called Melnick-Fraser syndrome. That is, seems to be specifically linked back to people who exhibit this preocular sinus and cyst. Now, if any of you are in the chat right now and have this dimple on your ears, you know, hey, this is pretty amazing stuff. Maybe share some of your stories. Maybe some of you have had kidney problems and you never knew what it was from. And you look in the mirror and you see this, and now you have some additional information to help cope and deal with what you're dealing with. Now, like I said, I've never had kidney problems, but if I ever were, this could be a clue to what this is all about. So the question becomes, what was Mengele looking for? Why was he so fascinated with twins? Now, it seems to me that in his attempt to prove the inferiority of certain races, he seemed to reveal something more sinister. The differences between the elite serpent blue bloodlines and the natural man that was unaffected or uninfected with the serpent blue blood. So let's get into this trailer and you'll maybe understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about with this. Let's make this bigger. Make sure we're connected up. Now, at the end of this show, we actually have a video of Mengele's son, and it is creepy. Now, the son claims to be opposed to his father. He says he only met him one time, but the two were passing letters back and forth. And so this is pretty crazy stuff. Now, let's keep going with this. Now, what you're seeing there, that guy was taking pictures. He is the first fatality of the film. And he's like this young boy or teenager or young adult who's trying to figure out what is going on down in South America. He sees all these Yahtzees coming in and he's like, what's going on here? And he's like read some articles and is working with the Juice Club to try to find and track down these Yahtzees, right? And he gets in over his head because he puts a listening device in their meeting in which Mengele is sitting around a bunch of hitmen and is planning the plot of the movie which is to take out the fathers of 94 clones of Mittler. We're going to call him Madoff Mittler. And so why would he do that? Well, he doesn't tell the hitman why, but really it's to shape and socially engineer their lives to match what Mittler went through when he lost his father when he was 65. And so they're trying to recreate that, to socially recreate his life, so that in hopes that one of these 94 clones will rise again as the infamous Madoff Mittler. Now look at the tail fin of the plane that the Yahtzees get off of. I mean, if that isn't coding, I don't know what is. And if people aren't following what that probably means, somebody help them in the chat. Let's keep going with this.
Joseph Mengele, the chief doctor of Auschwitz, who killed 2.5 million people, experimented on children.
So let me get this volume up here because this might be a little hard to hear. Now, this is Ezra, and he's with the Juice Club, and he's basically trying to track down all of these Yahtzees that have escaped after WW2. And he gets his sights on Mengele, and he's talking about what Mengele did.
Jewish and non-Jewish.
Right here, in this godforsaken place, I have created a scientific miracle.
So this is Mengele, the character portrayed by him, and he's down in South America, and he's running cloning experiments. Now, this is so close to what really happened in reality. Many people say this is more like a biography than fiction. And let's keep going.
I have turned the whole world into a laboratory.
Using twins mostly, injecting blue dyes into their eyes to make them acceptable aliens.
So they injected these children in the eyes with a blue dye. This was another one of Mengele's experiments. Let's look in here. Now, why would he do this? We don't know. But it's weird that he was also removing the eyes of heterochromatic children, transfusing blood between them. Let's go and look in here and see if we can find the dye. Now, why isn't that showing up? Okay. Let's look at eyes. All right. So, why would he do this? Well, we don't know. But there's something to this. You're going to see some of these children. Maybe he was trying to make them look more like Mittler. Who knows? But this is what he was doing. Very sadistic stuff. Here's some of the images of the people that he experimented on. His eye experiments included attempts to change eye color by injecting chemicals into the eyes of living subjects. Let's keep going with this.
Survive and catch them. Just put it all in history.
So this is one of the Mittler clones. Again, there are 94. I don't know the significance of the number 94. Let's see, what's half of 94? That would be 48.
Books.
Amputating limbs and organs from thousands, operating without anesthetics, but
now, he was doing limb amputations as well, and there's all kinds of other stuff that we don't need to go into. But suffice to say, he was doing some very diabolical stuff. You know, this is definitely fallen angel experiments to the max. He was probably trying to fulfill some kind of edict given to him by the fallen angels in trying to locate maybe some of God's people and trying to, basically label them as something that needed to be exterminated. And I don't know to the extent that what that is, but this is pure evil. There's nothing good about what Mengele was up to. Now, what is half of 94? Why can't I think right now? So that's 45, and 45 is 90. So it's 47. 47 and 47 is 94. Oh, but there was actually, yeah, there's 94. Let's keep watching. Now, this boy was not one of the clones. He was actually caught helping to install a listening device in their meeting. And then Mengele used him for an experiment. And this is where he was injecting blue dye into the eyes of this boy here.
Good boy.
I just came to get a glass of grapefruit juice.
He's got the flu. He's got the flu. He's got the flu.
Now, I put this part in there because this is another one of the clones of the 94. And they're all over the world. This particular one was in America. And they make it a point in the script to mention the flu. Now, this is creepy because they're conjoining, no pun intended, the concept of the flu with clones. This is very deliberate. He goes in to get some grapefruit juice. Now, of course, that probably means that he's getting vitamin C so he can feel better. But you also have to understand that citrus is one of the most genetically cloned, hybridized fruits that there are. We are the fruit, remember? And so it's all metaphor as well. They clone citrus and hybridize it.
I thought he could stay home a few days because of the... This is Jack Curry Jr.
Just Jack Curry. Now.
Now, this film is a prime example of how they hide messaging in the tail fins of airplanes. And of course, this one says ham. The last one said PPDOA. And Ham, of course, was hybridized. He started the whole Nephilim race after the flood. We tracked that bloodline in a previous video. And we went into very high detail using the Bible to track the bloodlines from Ham all the way to the Philistines to Goliath and beyond. Through the Egyptians and all of that.
This is fantastic. You know you have a double? The boy who lives in Gladbeck in Germany, exactly like you?
Just put it all in history books. Exactly like me?
I never saw anything like it. Two twin brothers could not be brothers. It is amazing. I thought he was this young boy from Germany come to visit you. Even the voice, the look in the eyes,
I want to find out about
Just do what I tell you. When you start paying the doctor bills, then you can hang around and get sick all you want. Now, just say goodbye and go.
Hello, is this the Harrington residence?
Yes, this is the Harrington residence.
So they depict in the film like 4 or 5 or 6 clones of this boy. And so you get the gist of what's going on here. And again, this is the child version clone of Adolf Hitler. So I asked the question, what was Mengele looking for? And why is it that he mangled so many people? What does the flu mean? And what is this blue blood dye all about? Why is he so consumed with these genetic traits? Let's keep watching.
Can I talk to your mother, please?
I would send out 6 more if they were caught, and 6 more and 6 more until the task was done.
Well, you could, but you can't.
This will only take a moment, I promise you.
My mother isn't receiving today.
Mononuclear reproduction. Cloning. What if I were to tell you that I could take a scraping of skin from your finger and create another Ezra?
Well, perhaps.
So here is the boy. He's actually from Connecticut, Jeremy Black. And that's weird because he doesn't do any more film. He only does theater. But he's known for The Boys from Brazil from 1978, as you just saw, the clone. And this is pretty much all the information I could dig up on him. He does not have a Wikipedia page, but that's pretty interesting. Now, let's keep going with this and listen to what they talk about cloning, because we're going to get into cloning and how it relates and takes us right back to our nested reality.
If you told her that.
Don't you understand English, you ass? We are not at home.
It was first done with plants. A cutting taken from a plant and transplanted grew to be the exact duplicate of the donor plant.
Bobby Vlock and 93 other boys are exact genetic duplicates of him.
Adolf Hitler.
Now we are doing the same thing with laboratory animals.
You mean you can produce an animal from itself?
Bred entirely from his cells. He allowed me to take half a liter of his blood and a cutting of skin from his ribs. We were in a biblical frame of mind.
So they admit that this is about recreating the Bible, the famed cutting of the side of Adam and Eve coming out of it. Well, now they're going to try to increase the nest by cloning off of that, cloning from the man without a father and a mother. This is where everything's headed. And somehow the flu or the VC is linked into this. This is what I've been telling you guys. So the film ends with the two men facing each other off. Mengele versus Ezra, who's trying to track him down. They meet and they battle it out in a scuffle. There are dogs involved who attack Mengele. Mengele ends up dead, and Ezra walks off.
On the 23rd of May, 1943, at the Big Hof.
We take the unfertilized egg of an ovulating female and destroy all of its genes and chromosomes.
He had denied himself children because he knew that no son could flourish in the shadow of so godlike a father.
We then implant the nucleus of the donor cell, which could be taken from a blood sample or even a skin scraping.
I could create one day, not his son, not even a carbon copy, but another original.
That cell, with its genetic material intact, eventually becomes an embryo and is born as a living creature.
He was thrilled by the idea. The right Hitler for the right future.
Well, it has no father because the egg was never fertilized. No mother because its genetic code comes from another being.
A Hitler tailor-made for the 1980s, 90s, 2000.
Now you understand what's really going on. Now you understand the gender agenda. And same gender basically using this type of technology to spawn a new world of beings, a new world of humanity, which isn't humanity at all. You see, the enemy wants to be like the Most High. The Most High created the nested reality. So what the enemy wants to do is elevate himself above the Most High and piggyback off of that nested reality to create clones. What are you talking about, Casey? This is crazy. What are you talking about? Well, what is the nested reality? It is things within things. And I began this morning to visualize the nested reality even more. And I got an inspiration from the Holy Spirit. The idea just popped into my head. And I was observing that apples or fruit of any kind have the same general magnetic field shape as their parent tree. A tree looks like a giant fruit, with the branches coming off and hanging on the ground and almost touching the roots that are below ground. So you have this above-below image. Now, that isn't new information, but what is new information is that within trees, birds build nests, which is more layers of sticks and feathers. But they only build this nest just before there are layers growing inside of them. The egg of their offspring. Are you starting to visualize this? The egg within the bird, within the tree. What does a tree have? The tree has seeds within a fruit. But do you see how always the origin always points back to a tree? The tree is the last stage of progression or regression, going back into the nests. So imagine that you're looking out into reality, and basically what you're looking at are a bunch of parentheses. Parentheses within parentheses. Do you see now how this works? The child inside the stomach, the chick inside the egg, inside the mother, inside the nest, inside the tree. You see how this works? And what do birds eat? They eat fruit. So these are the kinds of revelations that point back to the truth. And all of them end and stop at the tree, the one tree, the tree of life, Elohim, the Father. Let's finish up this montage here.
And this creature is an exact duplicate of itself? Oh, Doctor, how can that be? The one who is cloned, the donor, he has to be alive, doesn't he?
Not necessarily.
Infinitely superior. You were born of the noblest blood in the world.
Individual cells taken from a donor can be preserved indefinitely.
You have it within you to fulfill ambitions 1,000 times greater than those of which you presently dream.
With a sample of Mozart's blood and a woman, someone with the skill and the equipment could breed a few hundred baby Mozarts.
Now, this is the kill list of the 94 fathers. And notice that the very first person on the list was killed, or he asked to be killed on the date of JFK. Now, what's the significance of this? I don't really know. Maybe this has something to do with the bloodlines. I don't know. But this is really weird. So, do you understand the problem here with this whole cloning thing? Do you understand how the agenda for pushing this technology and developing this technology, and how they've dovetailed that in with socially engineering our society so that more opportunities happen for couples to try this? Do you see the agenda? Do you see now why they are making this very public and socially engineering our society down this road? Because this is what they want. This is what the enemy wants. He wants us one day to walk into a clinic or a doctor's office and basically decide that we just want a clone of our long lost child that we lost. We want that child back. And we'll get to a point in history where that becomes acceptable. But do you see the problem with this? The dust is cursed. It's already been made imperfect. It's like a cake. You can't make a cake. A cake is only as good as the ingredients you put in it. So the end result, it might look like a cake, but if you don't put good eggs in it, if you don't put good flour, good butter, it won't taste like a cake. And that's the problem with this whole cloning thing, and the enemy wanting to recreate and clone something that's already corrupted. the only way to have the best cake is through Jesus Christ, to go back through the narrow gate, to believe in him, so that we can get back to perfection. Now, this is the son of Mengele right here. I'm only going to play a few seconds of this. This is creepy.
He had a stroke, I heard, and then Seelmeier told me.
You're looking into the eyes of the son of one of the most diabolical creatures on this planet. And he talks about how he met his father. I'll link this as well into the pinned comment as well, so you guys can watch this video. We're not going to play it, obviously, for copyright. But this is what's going on. Now, I'd like to hear your opinions as to what Mengele was looking for. What was he trying to find in some of these genetic things that he was looking at? Some of these genetic traits. Let me go in the chat here. We'll do a little Q&A before I pop off here, because this is kind of a short show. And tomorrow, we're going to look at the passage. Now, we'd looked at the passage before on my Reloaded channel, but I took those videos down, and it's worth looking at again. And so that's what we're going to do. But in that film, they basically talk about warp speed and fast-tracking VCs to save the world from a spamdemic. And so I have a trailer uploading this afternoon. You guys can watch that. And that will be in preparation for tomorrow's show. So let's go in here and let this catch up. What do you guys think of all this? Now, many of you have already seen the film, Boys from Brazil. But I don't think any of you have seen it the way we decoded it today. Now, do any of you have some of these genetic traits? Heterochromia, the dimple in the ear. Now, there's no fear. Blue blood, red blood. It doesn't matter. Because if you are saved through Jesus Christ, we all have the chance at salvation. That's why he came. That was the reason. To give salvation to both sides, both bloods. I have people that get hung up on, oh, what are you trying to say? The Rh negative people are blue bloods? They might be. I don't know, but does it matter? Are you running this world? Are you part of the elite who have inbred themselves to magnify their genetic traits in order to rule over the rest of us? Well, then you don't have anything to worry about. As long as you believe in Jesus Christ. He says there is only one way to the Father, and that is through him. So there you go. So let's not get hung up on attaching labels to people, unless it's the people that rule this world, which is exactly what Jesus did. He called a spade a spade. He said, you are of your father, the devil. He knew who they were, because they were the ones inbreeding and holding power over the rest of us and causing the division. They're the ones that knew the secret to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They knew how to perfectly divide humanity in order to maintain power. They knew this, and Jesus knew it, and they knew it. So he called a spade a spade. That's the only people we really need to be concerned about. Not looking at each other going, who are you? What are you? What is this? What is that? Hopefully that clarifies things for you guys. So, weird stuff. And this was cryptic for me because, like I said, I share a couple of the traits that he was very focused on, almost to a degree of insanity. You know, he was really like fascinated with some of these genetic traits. And as I was reading and researching for this show, I was getting chills going, wow, he's like, I would have probably been his perfect experiment. You know, and had I been born in a different time in history, you know, you could have been subjected to this evil man. So, all right, let's go in here. You guys have any questions? All right. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the violence happening. You know, I think a lot of people are getting let out. You know, they're finally getting out and getting some sun. And some people are losing it. They're actually, and it's weird because we were just talking about this. Remember we were talking about this on the channel, about how we're starting to see violence that isn't even racially motivated, or it's reverse racism. We talked about racism revenge. Remember that? How people of color are now being allowed to punk anyone else, and no one can stand up and say anything about it because they're afraid to be cancel cultured. We were just talking about this last month, and here we are in March, and this is happening all over the United States. There are men of color walking up sucker punching Asian women. I mean, why isn't anyone standing up and saying something? It's because it breaks the paradigm. See, they can't continue to divide unless they put it in a nice, pretty little package. Has to be a white person doing it to a person of color. Otherwise, it doesn't fit their prepackaged scenario. It breaks the entire paradigm. And really what this is what you're seeing is the manifestation of the programming. So they've programmed us to be angry at Asian people because they're the ones who brought us all of this suffering. They're dirty. This is what they want you to believe. Because of the China virus, right? But that's all been programmed into us. It's not even true. The powers that be created this so that they could have a mechanism to release a VC that, as you can see, most people are going to go get because they want things to go back to the way they were. That's what this is about. So, don't get it twisted. Don't fall into the hate. Stop looking at each other and look at the people at the top. Look at the slouchies of the world and the presidents of the world and the organizations that are giving us all these rules. Look at the governors of the world, not at each other. That's what they want. They want us divided. They want us fighting about who's going to get the VC and who's not. So hopefully it's helpful for what I'm saying here, because this is very serious as we get into how the world is changing. All right, let's get back in here into the chat. Now, I want to close the show with a little bit of commentary regarding, superiority of certain races over others, okay? Jesus did not teach that. He went to the Ethiopian eunuch. He went to people of all races, treated them all the same. And I would hope that the people that come to this channel understand that it has nothing to do with color, your level of wisdom and intelligence. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn because I don't give credit to myself. We are all projections of the Most High. If we have love in our heart, then we all become mirrors and projections of Jesus' love, right? So it doesn't matter where that comes through, what skin suit it comes through. He can project knowledge, wisdom, love through any of us, regardless of whether you have a dimple on your ear or not. And that was the problem that Mengele had. He tried to believe that certain races were superior, and I believe he was trying to prove that the Bluebloods were superior. And that was coming from a different inspiration of the fallen one. So, that's what I wanted to say about that. Now, this goes both ways. I know people of color that try to say they're the superior race. They're saying the same thing. You can't start saying that because you're just as bad as the enemy. We're all humans. The rich are the one we should be looking at. The elite. They're the ones who are in control and have caused us all to go against each other. So let's stop comparing each other to each other, okay? Let's focus on who got us into this mess and how they're maintaining this mess. That's the only way out of this, and through Jesus Christ. All right. I love each and every one of you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.